Well, awesome. We've got a great crew today. And I got Noah here and Emma in the room as well. So they'll be helping with the chat and Thomas, of course, as well with the founder energy in the bullpen over there, which is awesome. So we've been adding lots of new features and lots of excitement around forms and things like that. And so with all the new features being added, I feel like sometimes it's good to slow down a little bit, and I get frequently asked just like, how do I know when I should be using the different features in Slant? Because there's a lot of exciting things that Slant can do. Um, but sometimes it's hard to know where to start and where to combine different features and where you can get the most out of building your different systems and things like that. So, um, today we kind of wanted to talk about that topic. A question I get a lot is, hey, what is a project versus an automation versus an opportunity versus a sequence? And how do I know when to use what and where to combine it? And what are common use cases that people are using these different features for? So we're going to kind of dive into that today, and talk about the different distinctions, how you can utilize them together, some of the cool aspects of these different features, and then, of course, talk through a couple of other updates and features. Um, know what Noah really wants to talk
No, we
about?
have a surprise. We'll save it for
Okay.
later.
Noah has a special surprise for everyone at the end of the webinar, but you have to stay through me talking about these features for him to share this
Won't
surprise.
be here.
So,
We'll stay for like 20 minutes.
yeah, you're all on the edge of your feet. I just know you're excited. Anyways, so let me pull up Slant and share my screen here, and we will dive right in. Okay. Okay, so first, just as an overview, like what are the differences between these different features and when should you be using them? So let's talk about projects first. So projects are repeatable processes. So anytime you have a clear start and finish, and it's a series of tasks, and you're generally following that same workflow and that same process every time, that is a perfect use case for a project. So good examples are like with your client onboarding, for example, you probably have to complete the same set of tasks every time you onboard a client. And obviously, there's nuances and there can be a few things that are different, but you're following a same set process every time when you onboard a new client. Um, Same thing with like annual review process. That probably looks really similar. Like money movement, trading, things like that. You kind of have set processes every time for those things. Another good example for projects is like, especially for teams, when you have like things you're collaborating on. So if tasks are going back and forth between different team members, it's easy for things to get missed or for people to be wondering where are the holdup on things, where am I missing on things, who am I waiting on, am I missing information from someone? Projects are a really great way to be able to collaborate with team members, to easily assign tasks to the right people, to be able to have a visual view of where those tasks live, and just to have a standardized process so that as things are moving around between team members, your clients get the same experience every time. And as you onboard new team members and things like that, they can just be plugged right into that process. So that is what a project is. An automation is more like when X happens, then Y happens. It's having something just automatically happen in the background. And it's a great way to trigger a project. So one of the things you can do in an automation is to trigger, but a project, right, is like dependent on you completing those tasks, and further tasks down the road can't be completed until earlier tasks are completed first. Whereas an automation is just going to look if that condition is met and just kick things off without you having to think about it and do that in the background. Um, and then to kind of tie in, we'll mostly probably talk about projects and automations today, but I also get questions about, okay, and where do sequences and where do pipelines or opportunities fit into this as well? So sequences, um, this is going to be like automated emails and tasks. So, if you have timed outreach that should just happen on set days and you want it to stop when someone responds to you or when a meeting is scheduled, that is a sequence. So, whereas with projects, you can kind of time different things happening based on you completing the tasks. And obviously, you have due dates for those tasks, but like things aren't going to happen until you first complete something else. A sequence, you're setting set days for those emails to be sent out or those tasks to be created, and it's just happening on those set days, no matter what. But also, you get that automation piece of it will stop someone in that sequence when they respond or to that email or if they book time on the calendar. So I'll dive into that in a little bit in a moment. But that is when to use a sequence. And then opportunities or with pipelines, this is going to be like a sales pipeline or when you're tracking in like a visual view, some sort of funnel that you have. And so a really common case, of course, is prospecting because you're wanting to just track where in the process that is, and you're also like doing conversion metrics and you're doing lots of reporting and things like that. It's very number based. We're tracking like probability that people are going to convert to a certain stage, tracking the AUM or fee opportunity in your pipeline. You can track conversion rates. You can do more because you've got really set stages and set fields that you're tracking for different people. And pipelines can be combined with automations, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So there are ways that you can automate tasks being created or emails being sent out as you follow these. But it's not as task oriented as a project might be. You're still following people along in different stages, but you're not having maybe multiple tasks associated with and these really set out processes that you're doing with each of these. So that is the high level overview of what those different things are. And just wanted to talk a little bit then about how you combine those together and what different like common processes I see that you can combine these different features to come up with a really sleek process in Slant. So um, let's dive into projects for just a moment here. We've walked through this before, but just to again reiterate how this works. So I'm going to go into settings under project types. We've added so much to our settings that I have to look a little bit more to where to find things. But with the project libraries now, you have good ideas on how to get started on some of these projects, which is great. And I mentioned this last week as well, but we also have the ability now in chat to also create project templates. So when you have, again, a repeatable process or a series of sequential tasks with a clear start and end, you can either look at our library to find some of our ideas of these processes, or you also can use the book chat, which is again on the home page under book chat, and you can describe what you're trying to achieve and tell it you want to create a project template, and it will do that for you as well from there. So I'm going to pop back into settings and just use one of our default ones. But when you are building the project, again, for client onboarding, it's a great example. You have a clear start and end. You know, it starts with, okay, they agree to become a client, and I have to send them the client agreement. And then there's a series of tasks that happen, and it ends with actually like having the meeting and getting started on their financial plan. And so when you build a project, I've had some questions about like, okay, a lot of times projects though involve meetings, and how do I make sure I'm triggering milestones and tasks happening at the right time based on those meetings starting? So, couple things here. So one, when you build milestones, these should be stages of your project. And they should be tasks that can happen simultaneously at the same time. So if a task should not be completed until a prior task has been completed, they should be in separate milestones so that those tasks are being created at the right time. So that's when you'll want to separate things into separate milestones. If you have tasks that can be completed at the same time, I think this one has just pretty simple task flow. But if you have tasks that can be created at the same time, then they can be grouped together in a milestone there. Baked into projects, we have a little bit of automation in the settings. So when you go into the milestone settings, you see this auto advance feature. The default setting is that when all tasks are completed, that you move along to the next stage of the project. So that's helpful for when you're wanting to manually review things and you're waiting on team members to finish things. You've got those processes, but you also can automatically move people into the next milestone based on either a meeting being scheduled. So if that client associated with the project has a new calendar event created, or if a meeting is completed, meaning the note taker joins a meeting that that client is on and processes the meeting. So there are ways to automatically move people across into these milestones based on these features. But also, you can kick off these projects with some automations. And you can do those with different milestones like the meetings being scheduled or X amount of days before a meeting, things like that. And so I'll dive into that in just a moment. But the other thing I just want to talk about is, um, you know, projects are very task oriented, but the tasks can also have the emails associated with them. So when you create a task, you have the option to either attach an email template or and this will just pre-populate with that email template. And if you use variables on that template, then it will pull in like the client name, things like that. So you can have a little bit of customization there, but it's generally that same email for every person. Or you have the option to add an AI prompt, and that's where you're giving a prompt for AI to draft an email for you. And that will be different for each person that goes through based on the context of that specific household and the prompt that you've given it. So with these emails, though, they're associated with the task, so they're not automatically sent out. When you go to complete your task, you'll see there's an AI action on that task. And let me look and see if we have one in here I could show. Maybe not. But you'll see when you open a task, you'll see an AI action tab and you'll see that drafted there. But again, that's not automatically sent out. You have to review that task or review that email and send it out with that task. But if we dive into automations here, automations is somewhere where you could, let me move that, somewhere where you could create automated emails or where you can automate a project starting based on a meeting. So as a reminder as well, we do have the automation templates. So when you're wanting to create these automations, definitely take a look through some of the templates that we have, but you can also start from scratch. And within automations, we also have an automation chat. And this is available here. If you also use the book chat to describe an automation that you're wanting to do, the book chat will also help you build automations. So we are trying to add more and more ways in Slant for you to just use natural language, just like you would meet with a CSM and describe what you want to do in Slant. You can now just describe that in the chat and have Slant help build these projects and templates for you. But in this case, I'll just show you here. So good example again is I want to start a project, but I want those tasks to be due or completed relative to the meeting start time. You might have someone schedule their first meeting as a client with you, and it could be a month out, it could be 2 weeks out, it could be the next day. And you don't want to have those tasks created too far in advance. You want to be able to standardize it relative to the start time of a meeting. That is something that you can do with an automation. So depending on what you're trying to do, there's a few different triggers you could use, but meeting reminder is a really common one. So this trigger specifically is triggering X hours or minutes or days or weeks, depending on what you select, prior to a meeting. And so for the example of maybe the client onboarding experience, if you wanted something to happen, if you wanted to start that process, a week out before that first client meeting, you could use that trigger here. And then the other thing usually you'll want to do is add a condition. So not just every
Yeah, I see
meeting
here. Well,
type
just,
through, but if it has a specific meeting title. And so if you're using like a standardized naming convention, and so you can say, for example, Noah's in here. You can see his cursor going around. You can say like, hey, 1 week before, and if the meeting title contains, and then, whatever your standardized naming convention is, but onboarding or something like that. Um, and then it will look specifically for those onboarding calls, and you could start then that project 1 week before. And I would say, okay, 1 week before I want to start, this specific project. For client onboarding, another common one we see though is that people want to start it based on when they become a client. So that of course is an option as well. You can do either when a household is created and it's a client household, or also you can do the prospect promoted to client trigger, which is anytime you click that promote to client button in the top right corner of the prospect, it will also trigger that as well.
And then it's important when the prospect promote a client, we also want to add confetti. So just,
It's a mandatory action in the workflow.
you want to show how to do that?
Yes, of course. Yeah, you can add confetti at the bottom here as well. You want to celebrate your team's victories and wins when you promote a prospect to a client or create a client household. So those are a few ways that you can use the automations with the project. A couple other things, so common examples where I see people using an automation with a project. One would be client reviews. So we have a video that runs real in depth into this, but in your engagement settings, you can set up your frequency and like some keywords and just kind of describe your process for client reviews. Once that's set up, then you can use the client review trigger to start annual review or client review project as an example. So again, this is also a date-based trigger where you're saying, okay, X days or weeks or months before they are due for a review, I want to kick off this project. And so if you want it to look out, 1 month before someone's due for a review, and a common condition I would add for this is, and their next review meeting is not already scheduled, so it bypasses any of the people that you've already scheduled it for, then I want to start a project. And if you create kind of a flow for that, you can add it in there. Another way, though, that you could combine an automation with a sequence for annual review is to create a sequence that invites people to schedule their annual review. So I mentioned before, but sequences is going to be like set emails going out on certain days, but it has some automation baked into it so that if someone either responds to the email or they book time with you, that it automatically stops them in that sequence from receiving further communication or going on from there. And so for the purpose of scheduling annual reviews, that's a great way you can do that. When you click plus new sequence, it will have you use an AI prompt to describe what you want to achieve. So in this case, I could say two email campaign, or let's do two email sequence for clients, inviting them to schedule their annual review. The first email will be sent about 1 month before they are due for a review. And you can get a lot more detailed with this, and it will produce an even more tailored sequence if you provide more details, like maybe if you focus on different topics in like a spring versus a fall review, describe that in there. If you want to have it reference a specific agenda or things like that, if you want it to describe what your normal target audience is and kind of generate the sequence based on that, it will do that for you. But it creates a starting point for you. You see there's a 2 email sequence, and it also can add tasks. So if you want to also add a call step in there or a texting step, you could create a task to do those things. But you're saying it's a set sequence. And this, of course, you can edit it. So if you provide even more detailed instructions in that prompt, it will do it for you. So if I had said, hey, on day 1 and day 3, it will do that. But if you want to edit this and have this go out sooner, You can move steps and I want this to happen on the 10th business day. It can do that for me. I can edit the contents of this email, but this is a set email and it's going out on set days. And if I then use this in an automation and I say, hey, when someone is due for their client review, add them to a sequence, because adding to a sequence is a step that you can do. Then it will add them to the sequence on day one, and it will follow the set timeline, and 10 business days later, they will get that second email. Unless, of course, they, again, reply to an email within this thread, it will automatically finish their enrollment in a sequence, or if they schedule time on your calendar. So basically, if a calendar event is created and their email, one of the emails associated with that household is also associated on that calendar event, then we'll stop them in that sequence. So that's a great way to like automate follow-up and just have that happen. Again, it is a set template, so it's going to look the same for everyone. If you like to review things or have more customization, that might be where you use a project because you're manually reviewing those tasks in those emails rather than just having them go out on set days. So that's an important distinction to talk about. Something I'll mention too, just because we have some things baked into sequence I think people don't know about while I'm on it too. So a couple things with sequences, just for your knowledge. We will not send on weekends. So these are business days and it will automatically account for that in your sequences. So these days are business days, not just days of the month. So if you say 10 days, you're doing 10 business days. It automatically accounts for weekends and holidays. So you can see on Labor Day, it will not send an email. If I had it spanning a longer time frame, it would again count those business days and skip on Monday. And then for time of day that it's sending, we do some things to calculate when the best time of day is to send. So we look at when clients are sending emails, opening emails, responding to emails, and we try and send those emails based on the best time of day for that client. But also sometimes we don't have enough information on them. Then we optimize for just in the mornings, which is the best time to send emails to people. So a couple things there about sequences, but again, it will automatically unenroll them. And so it's great for that type of follow-up and when you're okay to just send out a specific email to people. So going back to automations on this, I kind of hinted at this, but you can, again, trigger that for like a client review. Let me get out of this chat so you can see that better. And then one of the options you have is add to sequence. One thing I'll point out as well with automations, if you haven't scrolled through all of the options on actions, something you can do in an automation is add a branching step. That looks fun if I add that before. Let me delete this one. So with a branching step, the nice thing is you can have different actions occur. So something I hear, for example, is like, okay, with maybe C and D tier clients, I'm okay to add them to a sequence, and it's okay if they just get an automated email that goes out asking them to schedule. But for my A and B tier clients, I like to send a little bit more personalized emails and target those emails more specifically to them, or different wording. Maybe I meet for different lengths of time for different tiers or whatever that might be. You can use a branch and combine those different steps. And so you might say, okay, let me look here. So if in the branch, this is where you set conditions, if the condition is met that they are, a certain tier, A and B, one thing is going to happen. Otherwise, go here. Or I can also add additional branches. So if I wanted to even get more fun with it and do different actions for A and B and C and D, I could do that. But this is where you could start to combine automations with projects and sequences. You could say, again, we're going to start that client review project for those A and B tier because we go a little bit more detailed into our approach for them. But our C and D tier clients are just going to have that sequence go out. And you could add tasks if it's not a full process for you. Maybe you just have like a reminder to call them or email them. That's an option as well. You can combine that with tasks, things like that. But that is another great way you can start to combine those different features together. I've been talking a lot and I've been seeing the chat go off. Just want to pause for a second. Anything I can answer questions so far on anything I've gone over, or Emma, anything to call out from the chat I should discuss? Okay. And Emma says she's still getting to your chats. Keep the questions coming. This is great. Put them in the chat, and I know she's still getting around to some of them there. Awesome. So diving into a few other things here. So wanted to talk a little bit about the automations around opportunities. So let me just kind of start fresh here. Also, I need to log back into this demo account. It logs me out after 30 minutes, so let me get in again. And share my screen. Okay, so let me go to automations. This over here. Okay, so some of the things that you can do with opportunities, and then I'll also talk about, I think I just kind of referenced them, but talk about some of the project options. So some of the things you can do with opportunities, you can trigger actions based on when an opportunity is created or when a stage is moved. So again, if you have like a full repeatable process where people are completing those same tasks and there's a lot of movement between different people, I would still keep that in a project. But if you have like a pipeline where you're tracking prospects, but you still want a few things to be automated based on people, being moved to certain stages, that is something you can do with stage moved, for example. And so if you wanted to automate, hey, when someone moves into a certain stage, I want to create a task for me to do something. Like, say you don't even have a full project or process for something, but when someone, and this might even make more sense when an opportunity is created. So let's show that. But when an opportunity is created, let's say it's like a prospect pipeline and the first stage is identified, maybe you always want to call that person, and that's all you do. You give them a call, right? That's maybe not a series of tasks. Then you can create that task for, hey, let me call them, and it will just create that task. If it's not a repeatable process, doesn't have multi-steps, task probably is will meet the needs that you have. But something else you can do then is when someone moves into a particular stage, you can also have some sort of action automated. And so maybe you have a identified stage and then you have a connected stage for when you get on the phone with them and you are able to connect with them. And you want to send them an automated email that includes like a marketing brochure or something like that. That is something you can do as well. And you could say, okay, when the stage moves and it's this particular stage, so connected in the prospect pipeline, then I want to send an automated email, right? And you could just have an email template, include your marketing brochure, whatever you want to do, you can include that there. If it needs a higher touch, it needs a review, that is when you might create a task, and you can have an AI prompt associated with a task if you wanted to review the email. But if you wanted to be automated, that's how I would do it here. So there's different options with that. Something I will mention as well is you can also trigger things off of a task being created or completed. And so you can even have people move along the stage of your funnel based on certain actions happening. So right here, we're showing how you can make actions in the CRM automatically happen when you move someone to a certain stage in the pipeline, but you can also move someone to a certain stage in the pipeline based on actions happening. So I'll show an example of that. One of a common stage in a pipeline I see is meeting scheduled. And so if you want someone to automatically move into that, you can create that type of automation where you're saying, when a meeting is scheduled, I want to find the opportunity first. It has to find the existing opportunity. And then from there, you can move to a specific stage. And so, I'm telling it to find the opportunity in the prospect stage. go to the prospect pipeline and move them into the meeting schedule stage of that pipeline. And so this is again a great way to instead of manually dragging people across all the stages in a pipeline, there are definitely things you can do to automate some of those processes within this automations tab here. And so you can move people along based on a meeting being scheduled. Another one could be a task being completed. And you would just want to add the condition if it has like a certain label or something associated with that. So if you have a prospecting task, and when you complete that task, you just want it to move that prospect along into the next stage of that funnel, of that pipeline. That's something you could do as well. As when that task is completed, it contains a specific label. And as long as your task template has that label, then I want it to find the opportunity and move it. That is something that you can do certainly as well. And then to talk about a few other things you can do. So I think we've referenced this, but we have the send intake form as an action that you can do within Slant from automations. And we've had some great feedback from people on other triggers and actions that they want to add. And so more to come with this. But this is a great way to combine intake forms, our new feature, with automations as well. And so if you have a stage of your prospecting pipeline, which is closed won, you won the deal, and then you want to automatically send that client intake form to gather the necessary information that you needed for them as a client. That is something that you could definitely combine with an automation. And so again, you could say when they move into the prospect stage and it is the closed won stage, for example, then I want to send that intake form. So lots of different options here. Again, I would recommend kind of scrolling through some of the different actions because you might be surprised by some of the things you're able to just automate within Slant. And then to reference the other project actions, let me just go there for a moment. We talked about how you can start a project. So let me just do a basic action here so I can show these. We mentioned you can start a project, but you also can do things based on an action in the project being completed. And so some of those triggers are project created, milestone changed, or project completed. So good examples here. If you have a specific project for your prospecting flow, but you also have a specific project for your client flow, you may have a certain milestone that says someone's like a closed won person in that project. You could trigger, okay, when they get to a specific milestone, it's going to trigger another project being created. Or maybe you have like stages. I see people have different projects for like different meetings that they have with clients. They might have like a 3-step process when someone's a new client or new prospect. You could automatically kick people into the next project when a previous project is completed. So you do pay when the project is completed, start a project. You also can trigger something based on a project being created or started. And so maybe, again, for the purpose of having like a new client onboarding, when you add someone to that new client onboarding project, maybe you want to trigger an email being sent or an intake form being sent or something like that. And so again, that is a great way to combine automation with projects. I have been talking a lot and sharing a lot of examples, so I just want to make sure I'm capturing any questions and giving you all a chance to ask questions. Any questions so far on projects, opportunities, sequences, or automations? Awesome.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I tried to put together some automations this week, and I noticed maybe there's a different way to do it, but there's no way to trigger it to happen on a hard date.
Yeah, there's a couple ways you could do that. So with a trigger, one thing we have is the custom date reminder. So if you have a custom field that is a date type, you can trigger an automation based on that. That would be more like if you have different dates for different clients.
Yeah, I mean more like April 15th for tax day
Yeah.
or December 31st for the end of the year or there's a bunch of different in the financial
Yeah.
planning world, a bunch of different dates like quarterly taxes or just to be able to have select a date to start the trigger would
Hmm.
be really, really helpful.
Yeah. If you have a specific date, so the client date one is more for differing dates. If you have a specific date, I would do that with the recurring trigger. And so if you have, for example, like tax day, you could do, hey, on April, is tax day April 15th, Noah?
Yes.
Okay, good. On April 15th, you could trigger something. Or if it's like quarterly, like you were mentioning, every um 3 months, you could, and on a specific date, you could trigger something. And if you only wanted it to run one time, you would just disable the automation after it runs and then it wouldn't continue to run. But that's how I would do it on a specific date.
Okay. I have another quick question.
Sure.
I love the forms, but
Hmm.
it kind of bit me yesterday. I had one person, I had a like a review meeting and had her fill out the form and she attached her 401k statement, right? But we're in the meeting and I didn't see the 401k statement or I forgot about it because it wasn't in the meeting prep that that it does. Is there a way to make sure it looks at things like that for the meeting prep? I don't think the forms are connected, it seems like.
Yeah, so forms need to be reviewed before the submissions are applied to the client. When someone submits a form, you'll see a notification in your notification center, and then it will also send you an email. But when you go to the intake form, let's look at one maybe that has submissions. Let's go here. You'll see it like tags for if it needs review, or if it's applied. Not until it's added to the client profile is it going to actually look at the contents of that form because it wants you to review the information they're adding. But once it's added, it will look at that. And if you want to add something specific, like in the prompt for the meeting prep, for it to look at the files and look for a file like with a 401k name or something like that, you could add that in your settings under prompts into the meeting prompt for meeting prep.
Okay, yeah,
But it'll have to be
I think I
flagged.
probably need to prompt it to look for the forms because I approved the form, but it
Okay.
didn't. And I
Yeah.
then I had a whole conversation with it and I said, no, that's not that's something that needs to be added. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I would piece it together in the prompt. You can get real specific in the meeting prep on like what things you want it to look for.
okay, great.
Hey
Yeah,
Hannah,
good
just
questions.
to go to the first question he
Yeah.
asked around like custom dates.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you mentioned this, sorry if I missed it, but one of the ways I did it for like quarterly estimated payments was I did a custom date for clients that have to make quarterly estimated payments. So I have like a Q1 estimated tax payment as a custom date within the household and then
Hmm.
assign it the date. And so I use that as the trigger.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, both the client custom date and then the recurring, again, probably based on what you're doing, you'll have to think a little bit about what the best way is to do that. But that's definitely a great way to do it. And you can have that one run on an exact date, like Brett was saying, so that way you don't have to disable automations if you have a specific date. Or if, again, it's meeting only certain conditions, like you don't want it to go for all clients, but have it triggered on a set grouping. Yeah,
Well,
that's
that actually brings up another question. So if things are run on a specific date, like let's say a birthday or you have a timed email, but
Mhm.
you mentioned earlier that things don't run on weekends. Is that different? Is that separate?
That is separate. Yeah, that is just specific to sequences. So emails in sequences don't send on weekends.
Okay.
But if you're just doing like a on their birthday, send an email, it will trigger on the exact date.
Can sequences be stopped by text messages or phone calls?
No, because do you can't add text as part of a sequence or a phone call as part of the sequence, so it's not tied to their enrollment in a sequence. You can manually stop people in a sequence though, so it wouldn't be an automated process. But if you do talk to someone on the phone or they text you, and they shouldn't continue, you can go to their enrollment in a sequence and you can manually either pause them or finish their enrollment in a sequence. Yeah, these are great questions. Any other questions on what we've discussed so far?
And a quick question for you. I might be getting ahead of myself. I haven't gone through onboarding. I'm new here, but I've seen a lot of really cool sequences or financial planning deliverables. Is there a place in the documents where those prompts can be copied and just added to my dashboard or any other way of sharing that information?
Yes. Depends on probably which ones you've been seeing. We have some templates that already will be in your account when your account is created. So we automatically create prompt snippets and project templates, automation templates. Some of the prompt snippets include PDF, uh, generated PDF prompts that will create those for you. And then the intake forms also have templates. Noah, who's our resident advisor, has created a lot of really good stuff that I know has been floating around there. We have ways to add those to your accounts. They're like templated in our system, so we can definitely add some of those things into your account. Or Noah also has some pretty deliverables and things we could send, but we should definitely look into a place we could keep those as well for people to access.
But Joe, to make your own, you go to settings and then you go to prompts, and they live under prompt snippets here, and you can create a new one and apply that either on client chat, prospect chat, meeting chat, or book chat.
Yeah.
Okay. And it looks like before you clicked into that one, there was a drop down. Are those ones that you've already created, or are those ones that
Yeah.
So the ones with the slant logo are default ones. The ones with, you see Fred Jones from Scooby-Doo, those are some of the ones I've made. I can put into the chat some of the prompts I've made that are kind of interesting, and everyone can have them. I've given them out before, so I'll copy those and put them there.
Yeah. Yeah, so you'll have these in your account by default, and some of them are to like create PDF and things like that. When you do your onboarding though as well, and Noah will put some resources right now into the chat, but when you do your onboarding, your CSM can also help get some of those other resources in there as well. They'll have access to those.
Awesome. Thank you. I know a lot of people that I've seen have recently joined Slant, and I've seen some of their prompts in other places. So
Yeah.
I'll hit them up for those. But just, yeah, I'm sure there's some pretty cool stuff being built.
One of the best ways to make like really good prompts is to give your Claude or chat access to our Slant docs, which live in the upper right-hand corner of your Slant account. You can see the question mark, and you'll have access to like how Slant works and feed that to the AI, and then ask the AI to just make that prompt for you based on what it knows about Slant.
Another thing I'll throw out there as well for people that don't already know, but we have a shared customer Slack channel where customers like share ideas and ask questions and things like that. And we also have some of our team members there. So if there's like questions, asks, or things, we jump in there. But if that's ever interesting to people and just wanting to share like the prompts that you're using and sequence ideas, project ideas, things like that, that's a great place to collaborate. And I probably have a way to get like an invite link to that. I'll look at that. Joey, can you look at this and see if there's a way for you to do that?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Hannah, I
Thank
just
you.
had a quick question in terms of like, you guys have prompt snippets and magic buttons and like pipelines, and obviously there's like a lot of capabilities here and how you can chain them together. Is there like a like document you guys have on like just like you should use projects for X and you should use prompt snippets for Y or automations for this type of task?
We should make it, Ted.
We make
It's
it,
a great
yeah.
idea. Ted, you could probably ask for just about anything right now. That's the coolest email of all time. So
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll make one. But yeah, I'm gonna write that down so I make sure I actually do it. That's a good idea.
So it feels.
Awesome. Other questions? I think I may have heard someone else also chatting at the same time.
Well, I made some cool forms that we can share. If you want to share your screen, Hannah, and show.
before you jump in, I'm going to jive on Robert's question. I think it's a great, like giving Claude access to Slant safely. So what Noah mentioned, Rob, was giving Claude the Slant docs. So I'll link it in the chat, but that's just the like our public documentation of how Slant works and all the what every button does and how they happen. For those of you who don't know, those exist. If you ever have like a simple product question, that will be your very best spot. It has a chat. So if you put that in, let's say I use this CRM. It has all these features. I can prompt it. What prompts should I use? It will do an amazing job. The next level is there's the MCP between Slant and Claude. That you should talk to a security consultant and make your own decision on. If you do that, you're giving it all in there, and that's like a big decision. So anyway, but giving the docs is just like, hey, I use this software. Here's how it works in depth. It's a great place to do that.
Yeah. I actually, prior to this webinar, my Claude is connected with the Slant MCP, and I asked it for ideas on different ways to combine sequences, projects, opportunities, things like that, specifically for financial advisor processes, and it gave me some really great ideas. So that, like, it's really fun to connect that, and that's a great use case for it, like Thomas was saying. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much, and enjoy the weekend. We'll see you next week.
Thank you all.
See ya.